Hi there. In this game, Bobby Fischer is playing against Efim. This is in round 23. The Curaco candidates. E4 from Fischer. We see C5, knight F3, D6. D4, C takes, knight takes D4, knight F6, knight C3, knight C6. We see bishop C4, E6. The bishop drops back. Bishop E7. White castles. Knight takes D4, queen takes. Now black castles. F4 and now B6. Here, after King H1, it's quite an interesting move now is played by Geller, which is Bishop A6. And perhaps best is for the rook just to go to D1 here. But Fischer is a bit more optimistic. He plays actually Rook F3. On Rook D1, as an example, black with the bishop on B7, coming back to B7, and that semi-open C file does stand quite well here. It looks as though black's got a fairly comfortable position without worrying about king safety, because this rook's over here, not going for the king. So, okay, but we have Rook F3, and now a really energetic move in this position is played by black, which is actually pretty instructive. And this kind of move was used by Jonathan Ralston, Grandmaster, Scottish Grandmaster, winning the British Championship in some of his key Sicilian defence games. And I thought it was instructive then, and it seems instructive here, that this Scheveningen pawn structure can be pretty dynamic. Sometimes you have to watch out for liberating moves. And in fact, can you guess what black plays? D5. And this really activates black's position here. Very strong move. E takes D5 is played. If E5, then knight E4, and there's a back row issue because the rook's optimistically left the back row as well, which reveals itself here. It's just not a great position. If queen takes E4, white does get back row mated, and otherwise black's just standing much better after queen takes. Simple moves like this, black's actually a load better. That looks absolutely lost as well. So, yeah, it's a tricky position. Taking is a very tricky position. So, in fact, we have E takes, and now black's position is activated. Bishop C5. We have Queen A4. This queen doesn't have too many squares after this next move, Bishop B7. If you look, how many squares does the queen actually have? C6 has just been taken away from it. No B4. Okay, there's not too many squares. If the queen had gone to D1 instead, this position, black ends up playing D4 and gets a fabulous position like this. After knight G4, queen H4. Very, very strong position indeed, with an entrenched knight coming into E3. It looks visually crushing, this kind of scenario. You can see how black's pieces just got so energized. So the queen going to A4, a forcing move on the bishop. Bishop B7, bishop E3, but now after E takes, another square is taken away from the queen, the C4 square. So the queen hasn't got B4, C4, D4, E4, F4. It's only really got B5. It hasn't got A3 either. And here, Fischer plays bishop D4. It's a tricky position indeed. If the rook instead of bishop D4, goes to D1, D4 hits this rook, and if white plays an exchange sack, I mean, this is just better for black, this exchange up. So we have this situation here after bishop E3, E takes D5, bishop D4, where in this moment there is a theoretical downside in Fischer's position. And this is what I've been saying to my brother even recently about chess. You know, sometimes it's not your search for moves. You first look into the opponent's position. You look at the theoretical downsides first. That will help direct where you need to be finding the opportunities. And there's a kind of queen which is nearly out of squares here. And if you recognize these theoretical downsides, then you can punish them. But if you can't recognise them, you can't punish them. So the queen's slightly out of squares, and there is a move here which could have really led to a devastating loss for Fischer. Can you see what that move is? So theoretical downsides become downsides, and if you become a strong tactician, you'll be able to tap into those, celebrate those downsides of the opponent's position. But there's a theoretical downside. The queen's nearly out of squares. Geller unfortunately played rook e8. There's a really accurate move here, which is a6 with the simple threat of b5. Simple now if you put it on the board, b5, which would trap the queen. And this just leads to, but essentially this would be a very big advantage, whatever way it's cut, for white. If bishop takes f6, trying to maybe get a g-file attack or something, g takes, let's say rook d3, b5, white has to just give up a piece to not lose the queen. It's just winning for black. If we look at this again and say bishop takes d5, bishop takes, check, this is hopeless. b5 again. After rook takes, just take the queen, and it's rook up for black. So yeah, this simple move a6, but it's not simple if you don't know that there's a theoretical downside to punish. It's like our moves, our actual moves, are ideally should be a reflection or picking on an issue driven. If you can't see that issue in the opponent's position, then it's difficult to find this move, a6. So anyway, rook e8. Black's got something else in mind, just going for the king. The king is also, you could argue, well, the king hasn't got defensive knight on f3, so why not just go for an h2 attack, which is the temptation Geller had. This tournament's also being played in apparently pretty hot climate this time of the year. It's still pretty hot in Curaçao, so maybe the players are feeling the heat now, and this is round 23. So the humanity of it, the human issues need to be factored in as well into the chess in this absolutely grueling tournament. But okay, rook e8. We see rook d1, knight g4, and this is actually a mistake. Again here, even here, a6. Same idea. It's a much stronger proposition. If bishop takes an f5, d4 opens up the bishop, and this is going to be better for black. The bishops are liberated. Things are working well for black. Queen takes f7, queen e7. There's strong possibilities here for black with the pieces liberated. So anyway, knight g4, seemingly wanting to be, going in for h2. We have h3, queen h4, rook d f1. Now bishop takes d4, queen takes d4, rook a d8. And here we see knight takes d5, bishop takes, bishop takes, knight f6, c4, rook d7. So Fischer's got away with things to have this position, and white's actually got the advantage here technically. So the rook's double, queen e5, h6, bishop drops back, and actually rook d2. We have an active rook. After b4, white is working on the queenside pawn majority here. Rook f2, rook e1, and now, in fact, it seems as though Geller's attracted by a tactical opportunity of, you could say this is a kind of downside, scourable downside. He's attracted by rook takes f3 with the idea of rook e8, and what's happening here is it's destroying the king side and stuff. Rook takes f3 is played. Black would get a lot of play on g takes. Just in case you're wondering what does happen after g takes f3. Well, queen e8 offers white an option of taking off and having two rooks for the queen, but black actually does much better in this position. With knight h5, there's enough compensation here to work on against the white king. For example, queen e7, queen takes h3 check, queen g3, and then rook d4, the rook lift coming to crash through like a lawnmower mate pattern is very, very strong. So this is just devastating, this kind of pattern. off the check, rook f5, even if the queen defends, there's a threat of rook g5 now. And then taking off here, there's still a threat of rook g5. It all crashes through. So yeah, in a nutshell, basically the strongest way for black to approach this position is with knight h5. And it's very, very difficult to defend here. Okay. And queen f5, by the way, there's knight g3 check. It's very, very awkward to defend this position. Okay. We see instead rook takes, allowing a seemingly very, very dangerous skewer. So this is kind of weakening e1, rook e8. But Fischer has something in mind here. Can you guess? Yeah, he just takes off there, and he has a two rooks versus queen scenario. Now, just before, let's just step back for a moment there, for one moment. Let's just go back. Instead of rook takes f3, black's position wasn't that bad, actually, with rook e8. Say queen a1 to help defend e1. Rook takes, queen takes. There's rook takes f1 check, getting out of any pin. And after queen takes f4, it's about even, actually. Even though white does have a pawn majority, there are resources for black to make it about equal. So anyway, this was a critical mistake, basically, fluffing it. So allowing Fischer this scenario where now he's got two rooks against the queen. And after c5 with this passed pawn, the queen's actually an onlooker. The rook comes back to e1 here, and now this passed pawn is to be pushed soon. It's reinforced, and then it's only temporarily blockaded. We have g5, f takes. This is just hopeless now. Rook d6 check. If queen takes, then there's c7 queening. And here, okay, rook d4, it's only a temporary blockader. Rook a4, and the game ended here. If a5, then can you see what white can play? Okay, rook takes a5 would lift the blockade, and that's just queening. So I'll take you to the game end position, rook a4. So it was pretty dramatic, this game. The tournament's not played in ideal circumstances, it seems, and it's a very, very grueling tournament. And I think also it's not just the heat. You know, Fischer's probably getting annoyed about the number of draws in the other games. It's like the Russians helping each other in this hot climate, in this grueling tournament. So it wasn't one of Fischer's favourite tournaments. And the queen being trapped it's an uncharacteristic issue to crop up, in fact. But yeah, and it could have been punished with a6. So Geller missed a golden opportunity in this game to punish Fischer for that moment. The queen's almost like trappable. The other instructive moments, yeah, the trap of the trap. You know, Fischer doesn't mind queen takes. You know, he's getting two rooks for a queen. This rook takes f3 was just burning the bridges of the game. Very committal rook takes f3 decision when it could have still been about equal. So some instructive moments. Also, the early d5 in the opening I thought was pretty instructive. This Scheveningen has got some sting to it, especially with the bishop on a6 here. It's peculiar that the bishops kind of work very aggressively together, and it sort of displaced that rook. So this whole bishop a6 and d5. It's a very interesting mechanism to be aware of as well if you're playing the Sicilian defense. A very interesting liberation here that occurred in this game. Okay, so some takeaway points in my view of this game to bear in mind. Thanks very much.